Hello and welcome to tonight's stream. My name is Robert Simon and this is Media Church News. My guest tonight gave a very interesting prophecy, and over 2 weeks after it came to pass. Let's take a look at that prophecy right now.
On Europe, please, brethren, believers, GBR in Europe, prepare for a regional realignment, a regional reshaping of the boundaries. Prepare for uproars. Prepare for cries for riots, demonstrations, and discontent after this period shuts down. It's going to be confusion, it's going to be chaos, but it's going to be opportunity, says the Spirit of the Lord. Europe, prepare, because the Spirit of the Lord is going to visit you during the chaos. Prepare for the poor. Prepare.
All right, welcome back. Tonight with me is the Apostle Babs Adewunmi, all the way from Jos City, Nigeria. Apostle Babs, welcome to tonight's stream.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Robert. God's blessings richly to you and all our viewers. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. It's always nice to have you around. The last time you were on, it was very powerful, and those things are already beginning to play out. But tonight, we're going to be talking about the prophecy you gave on the GBR platform that came to pass. And the viewers just watched that video just now. You spoke about, you told Europe to prepare for the things that we're looking at right now. You told Europe to prepare for the protests, the riots, the discontent, and we are looking at it right now. Talk to us about it, Apostle Babs.
Yes, thank you very much, Pastor Robert. Thank you so much. Yeah, that word came on the Global Business Roundtable platform, the first international online conferencing. And that word came in a structure of the kingdom dimensions that is not limited to church, four walls of church. It's a structure, it's a global platform that speaks to the various spheres and dimensions of this world system, but according to a kingdom order. And I feel like that's the first important thing that the Spirit of God wanted to get across, and that's that we need kingdom structures, kingdom expressions that are powered by prophetic and apostolic context, frameworks, and structures. So that word came while we were speaking on that platform to the Global Business Roundtable, and the Spirit of the Lord began to speak to those people in Europe, both in GBR and then to the body of Christ, and to people who are leaning into the Lord, leaning into the Holy Spirit at this time, that Europe is at a critical point in this time. And the Spirit of the Lord was asking them to prepare, because there will be economic shifts in the world. There will be boundary shifts in the world. That's a general word globally. There will be global economic realignment, global political realignment, and then there will be regional shakings and realignments coming to Europe. And in that context, that word from that Holy Ghost speaking went on to talk about there will be demonstrations, there will be riots, and there will be protests, and there will be discontent.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that word began to speak to the riots, and the word concluded by saying those things will begin immediately after the shutdown.
Yes.
And the riots actually began from US, and it began as the shutdown was just about it was just called off in US. And people were still complaining like whether it was right to lift the ban on, movement, and people beginning to come out to work and all of that. So the shutdown had just barely ended when these things erupted. So that part of the word talking about shutdown and talking about riots, it meant that word included US.
Yes.
As well as Europe, and as well as other parts of the world. And because that part of the word indicated that the word was connected to the lockdown.
Mm. Mm.
So, and the lockdown came as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, right?
Pandemic, yes.
So, yes, so it meant that to be an extension, meaning that word was not limited to Europe per se.
Yes.
But the Spirit of God decided to like bring up that word while we were speaking to Europe. I don't know, he does those things,
Mm.
sometimes he will take an angle you don't expect to speak about something.
Yes.
And the word was spoken around May 26th. That was the day of the conference, May 16th rather. But
Mm-hmm.
by 26th, 27th, the man whose death triggered the riots in US died on May 25th, just about May 25th. By 26th, 27th, the riots had
Riots had
begun.
started. Yeah.
28th, by 30th, 31st, the riots had entered Europe through London.
Mm.
And so, like you might have noticed, London, Brussels, Germany, and Portugal, all those various cities, even Hungary, it's just begun there, and
Mm.
went on for been going on for several days. So, what's going on? The Spirit of the Lord was trying to position believers
Mm.
and the people of God who are leaning into the Lord at this unusual time, prepare them for the next phase.
Mm. Mm.
The prophetic doesn't just foretell the future, it reveals the mind of Christ, reveals his perspective, and it helps you gain insight and instruction and wisdom on how to posture
Mm.
according to God's will
Yes.
in the
You see,
days that
Apostle,
are
what I really love about the prophecy is that it's not a
yes.
prophecy of gloom and doom, not just a prophecy
Right.
of good that speaks to what's going to happen, so that it's just a prophecy of gloom and doom. It also speaks
Right.
about the move of the Spirit, the visitation of the Spirit in the midst of all
Exactly.
of these happenings, so that the church
Exactly.
understands that the happenings are actually a pointer to a move that is going to
Exactly.
be coming. So, can you talk to us about that visitation of the Spirit that will happen in the midst of the chaos, which is already happening?
Yes. So thank you very much, for that perspective, for bringing that up too. And that was the next thing we're going to get into, and that's that, the Spirit of God said, in the word of prophecy, that there will be chaos, there will be riots, there will be demonstrations, but there, in the midst of it, there will be opportunity.
Hmm.
And I will visit you in the midst of the shakings that will go on and the chaos that will be. I will visit you. So it's supposed to indicate to the people, the brethren, the kingdom people and believers, Christians in Europe, that a visitation of the enemy,
Mm.
especially relating to kingdom visitation, kingdom justice, and shifts of the spirit, was going to be going on in the midst. And in fact, don't get carried away with the
Yeah,
demonstrations.
get distracted by it.
Exactly. Don't get it, because it might, it might try to distract an actual visitation of the Spirit of God that will be going on in the life of believers, in the life of churches, in the life of end time servants, in the life of people who are seeking the Lord in these unusual times that have come upon the world. So it was a call to awaken to pray,
Hmm.
and that God was going to begin to speak to people, because it was going to be a steering. It was supposed to be for believers a steering to action, a steering to pray, a steering to receive the visitation of the Lord that will come personally and corporately, and to begin to enter into a moving of God that will start to steer from this very period.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes, so it's again, it's to position believers and the brethren, the people of God, in the midst of what's going to happen. And like you rightly said, it's not just, okay, this was going to happen, now it's happening, now you've seen. No, it's to gain alignment with heaven
Hmm.
about our own positioning, not to go with the world,
Hmm.
not to go
Yes.
with the shakings, but to get the wisdom of God and how we are to position in that understanding in the midst of what was going to be happening.
Hmm.
Because a
It-
lot of people will be carried away by these things. They will go with emotions, they will go with
yes.
passions, they will go with the wind of the day. But God
Hmm.
wants us to be discerning of what He is actually up to in the midst
Hmm.
of the conflict, and
And then
what
reposition
He is
ourselves.
saying
Hmm.
in the midst of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was talking with a friend from Germany, Deji, and he was talking about that the same thing he said. He said, what is God saying in the midst of all of this? Because he saw other believers too with him there in Europe, other believers who got carried away, who wanted to be part of the protest. But he said he just felt there was this restriction for him because he felt that there was a speaking of God in the midst of it, and for him the speaking of God was more important than the noise, the riot, and all the chaos going around. So, Apostle, you said something. You said godly people around the world prepare for famine, economic downturn,
Yes.
specifically for the sphere of food and agricultural supply. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So thank you. So let me start off from the point that you just made. Those brethren in Germany who are speaking with you, they should be encouraged because there will be shaking, but there will be opportunity. They should look for what the Spirit of God is saying. Look for the open doors that will be in the midst of all of this. In fact, there will even be economic open doors in the middle of what looks like a downturn of the economy. And it's going to be by our covenant positions that God will open doors for the move of God. He will open doors for the gospel. He will open doors economically for people. Right. So they should. I wish they could get to view the video if they can.
Yeah.
If they want, if they have the
We'll
chance.
attach we'll attach the link to this video so that they can go there, watch the full video, and get the prophecy.
Okay. So if they can view it, they will, can listen to the Spirit of God and get further detailed instructions. But yes, we were talking about there will be famines, and
Yes.
actually it's already begun,
Yes.
unfortunately. But there'll be famines, there'll be economic downturns. Really, just look at Nigeria right now. The federal government, the economy basically it's a dark outlook.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for many countries in the world. In fact, the first time we had the word about famine was in the middle of April. And during that week, we had a conference on Zoom where we were sharing that word. And strangely enough, after we shared that word, around the same day that we shared that word, the following, we got it during week New Wine in April. Then the following week, we shared it on a Zoom conference with other believers from around the world. And that day, a newspaper headline online carried
That same
the
caption.
headline. Yes, and it was amazing. The caption said, there are fears of a famine of biblical proportions.
Wow.
Can you believe that? They actually use the terminology biblical proportions. I believe you will have the clip with you over there. So maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
when you want, you can display it. I mean, like, they actually use it. And so the confirmation was too strong. It was too sudden. And it was there. They actually mentioned some countries, right? They mentioned this part of the world. They mentioned this part of the world. They mentioned other places, specifically that will be worst hit. And the weekend before, when we were first sharing that vision, we actually described, and that same day we were on the Zoom call, we described biblical type of famines
Famine.
that occurred. We described examples of biblical famines and prophetic prototypes of how God can help his people out of the famine, right? Only for a newspaper to come up and say famine of biblical proportions,
Proportions.
is a worry right now in the nations. So we did say that, but it doesn't, we say that some of these things God shares so that people can pray. God shares those words about Europe and the other places so that people can pray. We also shared words about boundaries of nations realigning. And, look at China and Hong Kong, look at Taiwan, look at China and India, look at Egypt versus Ethiopia, look at Nigeria, Cameroon. I mean, look at Israel
Yes.
and the Jordan Valley that is about to be annexed. So those things were said. But, there are prophecies that can be mitigated. Some can be averted. Some can be amended. You understand? Adjusted so that they don't have unnecessary negative impact that becomes overwhelming. Because the kind of famine I'm talking about, really, really, it looked terrible. When the vision appeared, it was kind of scary. But God is saying those things so that we can pray. I believe with prayer, some things can be shifted, some things can be adjusted, and some things can even be averted. Right?
Apostle, what you're saying right now really aligns with something
Yes.
the Bishop Oyedepo said just this week, last week. I don't know if you've seen the video
Okay.
where he spoke about the state of Nigeria, the state he saw Nigeria in, and it was not good at all. And then he called for the church to pray, and he said if there's any time that this nation needs a revival, it is now. He actually said that, and we have the video to show the viewers. We can attach the link and they can see that. What you're saying is basically what the Bishop Oyedepo said a week ago or so.
Exactly. We see in part, we prophesy in part, so others can play a part, So we are sharing the part that, we received by God's grace and mercy, out of heaven, so that people can pray and then get light and illumination and direction on, so that, and be able to be positioned under God's instruction in the midst of what will be happening. And that's the part I wanted to go on to,
Yes.
which is that the Spirit of God has spoken about people positioning covenantly, positioning in the prophetic spirit, prophetic impartations. And like the biblical story of the famine that Elisha the prophet prophesied in 2 Kings, I think that's chapter 7 or so, chapter 6 or 7. And he talked about that the Lord had called for a 7-year famine. And he spoke to the woman that he had been imparting prophetically, who he had prayed for and had a son, who he had raised her son from the dead, to go to a foreign place, to go into a position. And that's prophetic alignment in the midst of an economic downturn. But and so there was famine, but the woman missed the famine. There was recession, but the woman didn't participate in the recession. There was economic downturn, but she escaped it all. Because 7 years later, when she came back, according to the instruction, the prophetic instructions from the man of God, Prophet Elisha, Gehazi, Elisha's servant, who had seen the miracles that God had done for that woman under Elisha, was telling the king about the testimonies and told him about a woman whose son Elisha had raised from the dead. And as he was rounding up, as he was sharing that story with the king, the woman appeared. So that's prophetic alignment. That's prophetic timing. And prophetic alignment and timing caused the woman to miss the recession, the downturn, and not participate in the famine. Because immediately the king saw the woman, like, this is the woman whose son was raised from the dead by Elisha. He commanded all her property to be returned to her. And the harvest that came off of her land for the past 7 years of the recession was commanded to be handed over to her. So this is 2 Kings chapter 7, right? I think I'll just get the scripture exactly so that you can look it up. And imagine 7 years, she didn't hire labor, she didn't pay for land, she didn't do workforce, didn't do any investment, but the interest of the 7 years of the famine came to her because she aligned prophetically in God's covenant utterances and covenant coverage. So instead of going into a recession, she missed the recession and then came into gain, came into profit, came into promotion, and came into announcement before the king, at the end of the 7 years. So she missed the recession, but instead of experiencing a downturn, rather she even went upwards.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Aligning, prophetic alignment does not just give us exemptions from the famine, it actually positions us to gain in the midst of the famine.
To get a promotion, to get a profit. So that story is in 2 Kings chapter 8. So, brethren can
look it up.
People can read that up.
Okay, Apostle.
Yes,
Apostle,
so this is
go on.
This
please,
is
go on.
real story. Yeah, so that is how God is. That's why God is speaking and bringing prophetic impartations, bringing glory impartations, speaking, spiritual alignments to people in preparation for the days that are going to come. And so that instead of going down, they can actually be promoted. And then we are to also intercede so that it's not the impact of the famine will be adjusted. It will be uh, um, uh, um, shifted, it won't have that devastating effect, because that's what the word was actually, that was going to be really strong. But we can pray, and we can align, we can prophesy, we can help people get equipped, and there can be a lot of difference.
Wow, that's powerful, sir. You see, and the prophecy. Another thing I love about the prophecy, right, is that it doesn't just say what is to come. Doesn't just tell the believers to align. It also talks about what to do, because you said something about secure your business by technology online. To take your business online, take supply chains online. Supply chains are going to change, and then you began to speak about how supply chains will shift from certain territories. I don't want to start mentioning now. So from certain territories to certain territories in Africa. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, so that was a general word, a part of that word for the general believers and on the Global Business Roundtable, but it applies to anybody, any believer who is having the Spirit of the Lord in their hearts. And that's that economic shifts are going to come. Gates and doors are going to shut, but doors will also open. Gates are going to shut, but gates will also open. So people shouldn't get too discouraged if they see some gates shutting.
Oh.
Because what's going on is there is a realignment of the nations. The last time we talked together, we talked about the Passover,
Yes.
the realignment of nations and the Passover and the realm of national sonship. And then with the Feast of Pentecost, we were sharing how that there will also be a manifestation of the realignment of nations with the Feast of Pentecost from end of May into June. And look at June, the nations have started realigning, the shutdown has started opening according to that word. People have started opening up. And then, that the shutdown will end, but shakings will continue. Yes. So the shakings are still going on in these various forms. The economic realignments are coming. So people should position in the covenant, because God will respond to them in the covenant. People have to go from corporate world, structure, patterns and structures for doing business, to kingdom covenant patterns and structures for doing business and doing, the things that they are involved with, because God, the prophetic, will speak to them according to the covenant. The prophetic will visit them and empower them, not from world economic strength, because there may be no strength there, but according to covenant strength, right? And that one of the things that this period of shutdown, which God said was a period of recalibration for his people, was the online pattern. New technologies will be coming up. In fact, there will be a battle over technology.
Wow.
Right? And it's already afoot, but there's going to be a battle over technology.
Yeah.
There's going to be some serious, battle and war over technology. So that's a gate that believers have to navigate, and know how to position themselves on, right? Especially those who are involved with a particular level of business, but they have to secure. They have to operate securely on those fronts, because, there are going to be things happening regarding security. That's going to be part of.
Yes, I noticed it. I noticed in that video you stressed the security part, securing. You really stressed that area in the video. I noticed that. Apostle, I'd like for us to continue, but yes. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. I have to bring you back so we can continue on this note, and we can begin to talk about what believers need to begin to do in the midst of this. And one of the words I want to hold on to that you said is the church shouldn't panic in the midst of this. Instead, we should position ourselves in the midst of this. So I would like to bring you next time so you can give a word for Europe, and then you can talk to the church in Nigeria how to also align in the midst of these things. Thank you so much, Apostle, for coming on. It's so wonderful discussing with you. Always nice. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers, for coming online. We just finished having this wonderful discussion with the awesome Apostle Adewunmi, all the way from just Nigeria. We'll be back again with another episode with the Apostle Babs. God bless you tonight. God bless you.